Hello and welcome to NDTV. I'm Aditya Kaul. The EU-India FTA was in fact declared earlier this week and has been welcomed across industry and across the EU 27 member bloc and India as well. There's a lot of cheer around it. But what does this mean for the consumer and for the businesses between the 27 member EU bloc and of course India? And what does this also mean for the auto sector? Joining us live exclusively here on NDTV is the President and the CEO of BMW Group India, Hardeep Singh Brar. Thank you very much, Mr. Brar, for joining us here on NDTV. Let me begin by asking you about your first reaction on the EU-India FTA. Of course, I'll come to the nitty-gritties and the technicalities on the auto sector and to seek your views. But overall, there's been a lot of sense of positive outcome and cheer, and there were negotiations that were underway for the last 2 decades. But how do you see the outcomes now that the political declaration has been made? It may take a few more months for the implementation to take place after the ratification in the EU Parliament. What's your first reaction and sense from the declaration that has been made in New Delhi?
Thank you, Aditya, first of all, for having me. I think this is a step in the right direction and just at the right time. And I would say it is very, very calibrated step. I think two big economies coming together and opening doors for things which where we all have expertise in. I think it's in the step in the right direction, and in long run, it is going to benefit both the countries, or I would say one continent and one country. And I think both put together is almost 25% of the global GDP. And why not? And looking at how the geopolitical things are panned out, I think that this has come just at the right time.
Well, yes, that was going to be my next question, actually. There was, for the first time, an EU-India business summit that also took place at Bharat Mandapam with business executives and top leadership from various companies from Germany, from France, from across the European Union, but from India as well. What was the sense that the people got from the speeches of Prime Minister Modi and the EU leadership? And particularly, what does this mean for the auto sector between EU and India?
Of course, it's a very positive step in the right direction, and this will open up doors for many more cars, probably which we are not able to import today, especially at the top end, because we have number of cars, and for every car we have to first localize in the market, and so there's a long process to it. And if we are trying to import these cars, 110% duty is very prohibitive. And then customer says, why should I pay that much of an amount? I think, moment it comes down, once it is announced, it comes down to about 30%, which is likely towards end of 2027. From 110 to 30% is a good 80% drop for those cars which we are not able to import today. So this will be, and there are a lot of enthusiasts who want to drive these cars, especially, we have M cars and a lot of top-end cars like XM, iX. I think all these cars will be accessible to the consumer, and hence they will be able to drive these cars. Of course, it is not really going to impact the cars which we are already producing, because we are already at a 15% tax rate. And even after 1.5 years, it comes down to 30%. So the real benefit is going to be for the cars which we are importing today, which is just about 5%. And then, yes, when the prices come down for those cars, then we can expect that this 5% may go up to 10% in terms of contribution to our overall volumes. But maybe another year and a half to really go for that till it is really documented, ratified, so on and so forth. We expect anywhere between 18 to 24 months before it really comes into play.
Yes, there is of course a lot of cheer among the consumers of luxury cars or SUVs all across India. There's also the aspirational India, the middle class also, who really want to invest in luxury car segment. But of course, a slash in the prices would be making them excited about the future prospects. Could you explain for the viewer that whether we will see a systematic slashing of the prices, or is this just rumor mongering that's happening right now? What kind of a focus has been there on the auto sector when it comes to the pricing, because there would be a drastic reduction on the import duties when it comes to cars, especially from Germany and all across the EU that arrive in India. Because you mentioned about the manufacturing that happens in India, but will there be a systematic slashing of prices?
Yeah, of course. As I said, the plan is from year one to year five. So year one, it will come down to about 30 to 35% from 100. So there are two slabs up to $40,000. That's 70% slab. Beyond 110, about beyond 40,000 $40,000, it's 110% import duty. Now this 110% or 70% will come down to 30 to 40% at the end of when we start this implementation of FTA, which will be about year and a half to 2 years away. And then beyond that, gradually up till year five, it'll come down to 10%. Right. So it's a positive thing, but it is not immediate. I think we are also getting a lot of queries from the customers that, the prices have slashed to half and there are so many queries and customers are holding on. For those people who are looking at it, at least for next 18 months, there is, once it gets implemented, I think for EU, it is a bigger challenge because they have to align with all the 27 countries which are there in EU. For India, it is very easy. So I think we are dependent on how quickly EU can come back to us. So after a year and a half, when this comes into play, that's when for all the imported cars, it will have a slash of almost, let's say, 35 to 40%. And that's when you will start seeing the real benefit. But for all the other cars, which are 95% of our portfolio, which are being produced in India, I don't see any impact because they are already, the parts are being imported at 15% duty. So they're already getting the entire benefit.
Well, we saw the Prime Minister Narendra Modi speak immediately after the delegation level summit talks between EU and India at the Hyderabad House, and he also laid emphasis on manufacturing. We've also known over the last many years the Prime Minister and the Modi government speak about the Make in India initiative. Now, a lot of manufacturing of these cars takes place in India, but after this particular giant mother of all deals, what do you expect? Do you expect manufacturing to get a boost? You also mentioned about the 95% of the production of your cars taking place in India and only 5% of the imports really taking place from EU. Could this really help in the manufacturing projects that are taking place here in India?
I think that's a very interesting question. And I think while we will still import at 10% after 5 years, but for the Indian manufacturers, it will become 0%. So for them, it is a very, very big benefit. But I think two things which Indian OEMs need to really do. First is the brand acceptance in the European market, right? For a European buyer, I think they're very, very brand conscious. And during these next 4 to 5 years, Indian OEMs need to really work on building their brand in the European market so that customer says, oh, fine, I'm going to buy it. And for that, they really need to work on the quality levels because the quality levels in Europe are very, very stringent. And if they see any kind of, fit and finish issues, they are very particular about the gaps in the car, the fit and finish and all of that. And I think that will also help the Indian OEMs to really build the brand which they really want to do. So it starts with the product, with the quality of products. And then, of course, you need to do a lot of other things to build the brand further. But it cannot come unless your cars have that quality level. So a very big opportunity for Indian OEMs. How they really work around it is a question mark.
Well, we've spoken in detail about manufacturing, market access, and the growing bilateral ties between EU and India and what this means for the auto sector. But also, we've seen a global turbulence over the last 4 years. The Russia-Ukraine conflict, the Israel-Gaza war, and this has impacted trade. This has impacted connectivity to a great, great extent. Do you think that supply chains that have been impacted over the last few years will get better with this particular deal, the kind of access, the kind of ease of doing business and relations between EU and India? Do you think the supply chains would benefit from this kind of a deal?
Yeah, of course. I think you've already answered half of my question. There's so much of turmoil, and you need some market which can, absorb the shock, right? Because you don't know what will happen on the US side. I hope that also gets sorted. And if that gets sorted and EU opens up, I think that it's a really, really big market to really cater to from both the sides, not only from India to EU, but also vice versa. And we all have our own advantages which we can really work on. So, if pharmaceutical, gems and jewelry and textile is getting impacted because of, the US tariffs, that if Europe opens up, I think all these three issues that we have will get solved. All right. And similarly, from Europe side, I think they're very good in making the quality machinery that we want for manufacturing. I think once that becomes cheaper, our cost of manufacturing will also come down. So I think it's a step in the right direction, and we all have our advantages. And if we support each other in different countries, I think it is a win-win situation for everyone.
Right. Finally, Mr. Brar, we've spoken in detail about your views on the auto sector, on the EU-India FTA, but there's a huge, competition that really happens often in the car segment, different car segments from luxury cars to small cars here in India. And there are various brands that are competing from Germany to Japan to Korea and elsewhere as well. So do you feel that the small car segment here in India could get more exciting, more competitive here in the country? What about the luxury cars? Do you feel that the luxury cars could catch more steam and there could be a new audience deciding to actually get more luxury cars? What would be the impact on that?
So I think, see, up to 15,000 euros, there is no impact because the benefit only starts from 15,000 euros onwards. So there could be some cars in 15,000 to 30,000 euros, which probably some of these players have, and they could bring it to India. But let me tell you here, the Indian cost of manufacturing is almost 60% as that, 50 to 60% as that of components in Europe. So even when you bring those cars and where the cost of manufacturing a component is already high, I don't think at a lower end it is going to be very because there's a lot of competitiveness within Indian OEMs. And even when you bring these cars from Europe at 40% duty or 10% duty, which is the best case scenario, even then those cars are going to be more expensive than the Indian cars. The only thing which could attract some of the buyers would be to get those cars from, let's say, the European OEMs, which could be an attraction. But Indian consumer is very, very value conscious. And if he's let's say, spending 30 to 40% more and not getting the features which he's getting at a local level, I don't think he will really latch onto that. So the only big benefit I see is the cars which are, let's say, 50,000 euros and above, which we are importing today at a much higher price. And when they come down, that end of luxury will really get benefited, which I said is only 5%, and how big it becomes in the next 5 years is a big question. But I would say, that can actually become 5 to 7 to 8, or maybe best case scenario, 10% as well.
Right, Mr. Brar, you joined us here on NDTV. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us exclusively here on NDTV.
Thank you, Aditya.